All right, good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. We're excited to have you here for this month's trauma-informed workshop. My name is Haley Emmett. I am one of the trainers with the Training and Policy Implementation section here at CalVCP, and I am excited to introduce to you today our speaker, Elaine Whitefeather. Elaine is the Executive Director for A Community for Peace, a trauma-informed domestic violence service provider. During her 35+ years of human services work, Elaine has become a recognized authority in the fields of domestic violence, sexual assault, and child abuse prevention. Her experience spans from crisis line worker to executive director and all positions in between. Today, Elaine joins us to talk about cultural competency, cross-cultural communication, and moving beyond diversity to build bridges of commonality with those that we serve at CalVCP, crime victims, service providers, their families, and so on. This topic is especially relevant to CalVCP, given the diverse population that our agency serves and our efforts to reach the underserved. Elaine has graciously shared her knowledge and expertise with us at a number of CalVCP events, which include previous trauma-informed workshops and our Northern California conference last year. She is a valued partner and friend of CalVCP, and we are thrilled to have her return today to share her knowledge of cultural competency and understanding. Please join me in welcoming Elaine Whitefeather.
Thank you so much, Haley. Good morning, everyone. It's my great honor to be here and to return once again to share just a little piece of wisdom, I'm hoping, around cultural competency beyond diversity. Before I begin that, let me just begin as in my native way of saying thank you. So we always begin in gratitude to thank you for all that you do, because I know that there'll be lots of people who won't, and lots of people who don't even know they should. So I'm thanking you on behalf of all of those folks you serve who may be so impacted by their trauma that that's not a thing that comes to their mind. And so in case they don't come back to thank you, I thank you. This work of beyond diversity and building bridges, I've been a diversity trainer for about 30 years. And my expertise in terms of just domestic violence is also in the context of creating culturally competent domestic violence programs throughout the world. And so we could spend a tremendous amount of time trying to figure out how to get along with 8.5 billion people in this world, but then we'd be here for probably 8.5 billion years trying to figure it out. I figure we already know about people's differences because that's what we notice first. Hey, how you're not like me. We notice that first. And so I wanted to do a shorter version of this thing, and the thing that I've been training for many, many years is about how do you build bridges and commonality in a very quick way by identifying what you have in common with someone versus looking at their differences, correct? So that's sort of the idea. The reason I have this particular first slide up, though, is that I want us to understand that when we're talking about trauma-informed anything, it's actually really still in the context of social justice. If we think about that, especially when we're talking about crime victims, or we're talking about victims of domestic violence in my case, or sexual assault, we're still talking about the issues of social justice. When we talk about our underserved, and we're talking about our communities of color, we're still talking about the issues of social justice. So in that context, I want to give us that backdrop first. And so these are the three elements of what's necessary in order for us to create social justice in any program, in any environment, in any organization that we're doing. And it really doesn't matter what the content is of the mission you're delivering. This is still the environment that you want to create when you're dealing with inclusivity. So number one, you got to create an environment where the truth can be told. You're the first environment. How knowledgeable are you about being trauma-informed? How knowledgeable are you about victim response? How knowledgeable are you about how folks respond to things being normal under the circumstances with what they're going through? So how knowledgeable we are, how well-versed we are, how well-balanced we are, our state of being impacts our ability for that person to tell us the truth. If we're already judgmental, if we already have biases we don't know about, if we don't even realize that this is normalized stuff, and we don't have any idea at all that we're being insensitive, then we're creating an environment where that person cannot tell us the truth, and we didn't even try to create an environment where the person didn't tell us the truth. So that's why sensitivity trainings and things like this are important, because they help you know how to adjust. They help you know how to shift your perception and perspective. Why? Because you're not in trauma. Remember that to be trauma informed, one of the reasons why it's so hard to be trauma informed, because it places the burden of responsibility on the service provider, not the client. That's why it's so hard for systems to be trauma informed. It means that 75% of the burden of working with the client is on you, because the client is in trauma. So they can only give you 25%, and the 25% they give you is not necessarily going to come in the order we need it to happen. So when we're trauma informed, we're understanding, we're here to serve the person and understanding the context with which they are experiencing their trauma. That's the first element, the truth, where the truth can be told. The second one is we have to create, and I really hate this because I'm OCD and now I see a typo. So let's all pretend like I don't see the typo, and we'll use one of my cultural backgrounds of denial. And we'll just move forward. And we'll talk about that in a minute, about how we use it as a coping strategy. So we're just denying that there's a typo right there. And we're moving on. So we're going to create an environment of accountability. That means that when you make a mistake, you should be the first one to say it, because other people know it, right? And it's okay. Mistakes are places waiting for wisdom. Think about that. Mistakes are just places waiting for wisdom. So it's okay to make mistakes. When I'm training my advocates, I'm like, the last thing they have to do for graduation is say 4 times out loud, I will make a mistake, I will make a mistake, I will make a mistake, I will make a mistake. And they follow it up with, and it'll be all right, and it'll be all right, and it'll be all right, and it'll be all right. Because I'll seek wisdom, I'll seek wisdom, I'll seek wisdom, I'll seek wisdom. And every time you seek wisdom from a mistake you make, then you're not going to make it again. But if you're all worried about what's the right thing to do, the wrong thing to do, what are all the friggin' rules, then you'll understand you're coming from a different dominant cultural perspective anyway, because we are here to serve human beings, not rules. We're here to serve human beings who are impacted by trauma, not data. That's our sidebar. You know, nice if we can get some numbers out of it. Nice if we can do some other stuff, but really these are human beings. And so when you make a mistake, or when you were insensitive and you didn't know it, just as soon as you become aware, just say it. Just say it. And here's the other thing. Don't fake crap. You know what I'm saying? Do not fake stuff. If you don't know stuff, say you don't know stuff. But you want to know. You want to learn. Here's a good example. One of my advocates was down here working at Sacramento Cares, and she was doing an individual counseling with someone who's transgender. And so she has a lot of wealth of background, but not in this particular field. So she sits across from her client. She goes, I'm going to tell you the truth. This is accountability. I'm going to tell you the truth. I so much want to work with you, but this is way beyond anything I understand. I've had no training in this. I really don't understand, but I am so willing to learn, and I will work with you, but I want you to have the best person that you feel the most comfortable with, and I don't know that it would be me. That truth right there and that accountability right there caused that client to say, it's okay if you don't know, then we'll work it together. And if you're okay about learning, then I'm okay about working with you. That would be a social justice response. That is creating an environment of truth and accountability. And the last part, you must change the conditions that cause the issue. Social justice has to do, the reason why you're even here in this conversation about serving the underserved is actually social justice. So we're acknowledging, when we come to cultural competency, is a really hard truth. That this is sort of sometimes why people don't contract me to do diversity training. Because you have to start off with this very basic truth and understanding. And that is, we accept the isms in our institutions. We have to accept that we have institutionalized isms. We have to accept that. And if we don't accept that, then we're going to stay in this defensive place, and the folks that are underserved will still feel like they're underserved. So to be culturally competent is to accept. We have a national sort of cultural institutionalized isms. Why? Because people who are underserved were never in positions of power to create policy, to create programs, to create delivery of services. That's just it, really simple. We don't got to feel bad about it. We don't got to feel guilty about it. We just need to deal with the truth of it, right? And the second thing is, what does it mean to be culturally relevant? Well, culturally relevant means for us to give services the way people need them, not the way we want them to have it. To give services to the way people need them, not the way we want them to have. Does it make sense? So here's what I'm saying. Look, a good example in domestic violence, here's a woman who comes in for services, and she, you know, we've got a bunch of them for her, and the only thing she wants though is $20 for gas. Now we got shelter, emergency shelter, we got counseling, we got ROs, we got legal, we got everything you need to have, but what she wants is $20 for gas, right? So staff is like, we have all this something in, we only want $20 for gas. What are we gonna do? And I said, well, that's what she needs. Do you understand why she wants the $20 over the shelter and everything else? And they're like, no. I said, well, remember, culturally relevance means we give them what they need, not what we want them to have. I said, remember her story. I said, this woman was so beaten and so traumatized that her whole face and everything had to be reconstructed. And she comes from a pretty wealthy family, so it's not like she doesn't have resources, but she's been cut off from that family, right? And because this person has hunted her down, she chooses to remain homeless in her van with her half-wolf dog and a shotgun. And I said, well, that's why she needs $20 for gas. And they're like, what? I said, hey, she has to keep on the move. She can't stay still. You'll find her. The most important thing you can do to give her freedom is the $20 for gas. She's not asking to be stationary somewhere. Do you know her story? Do you know her background? And so when we gave her the $20, that was what she needed. And the thing about that is that she came back for the other services after we took care of her immediate need, right? Culturally sensitivity means you give services, not just what they need, but in the way they need them. Cultural sensitivity means to deliver the services in the way that the people need it. And that's also what trauma-informed means. So as we move, would you tell me, right? Yeah, oh, it's so exciting, okay. So in order for us to build bridges of commonality, these are the things we kind of have to think about. In order for us to create that first environment of truth, you got to figure out your own internal blocks and barriers. We got them. Prejudice means to prejudge. So don't go any further than that because we're all prejudiced. Everybody's prejudiced because it just simply means to prejudge. Okay? Biases now come out of prejudices. Biases will taint the way. They change your perspective of things. Biases are not okay. Biases create the barriers, not prejudice. If you know you're prejudiced about some stuff, then you will be more sensitive and more conscious when you're dealing with something you already have a prejudice about. But what if you got a bias and you don't even know you got a bias until it shows up, right? So you can be as simple as, you know, somebody says you want some ice cream, you're like, you know, and we have all this lovely vanilla with all that stuff. You're like, I don't even like vanilla, I like chocolate, that's it. That's a bias right there. It's stopping an opportunity, a possibility of trying anything, and it's a simple thing like ice cream, okay? So I'm wanting us to understand that when we act on our biases, that's when it creates a problem. When we act on our biases and then we create policies or rules or procedures, then that's called discrimination. So biases and discrimination are what we're not trying to have. Prejudice is what we all are. We cool with that? Oh, let's relax, because sometimes that's a relief. Because we all try so hard, because I think we all heard you're not supposed to be prejudiced. I don't know how human beings cannot be, right? How come you buy the car you buy? Because you like that color, okay? Because you like that style. You're prejudiced, okay? That doesn't make you a bad person. I really want us to get that as a human being, because I think we've been told so long that we're not supposed to be prejudiced when that's a natural human being response. What we need to do is be aware of them. So when you know what yours are, then you know how to be more conscious when you're meeting that situation. Don't judge it. Everybody's got it. So pay attention to that. So you got to know your own internal blocks and barriers to those who appear and seem different. And you also have to be able to identify the reflections of prejudice and bias in human services. So what that means is that, you know, we're not the only ones. They got it toward us too, right? You understand that? Because they're walking into a system. Underserved people got issues with systems, in case you didn't know. Just sidebar, you know, cops, CPS, we got some issues, a few issues, all right? So they're coming in with a toot anyway. And you know what? When you've had a crime and you've been traumatized, I think toots go with it. I think that's pretty normal and okay. You shouldn't be peaceful. You shouldn't be real happy when crap's happened to you. I think you should be having an attitude. I think that's normal. I don't think it's normal for us to have one because it ain't happening to us. But it's normal for them to have one. That's right. So start right there for trauma informed, right? Because when y'all have a problem, do you need people to tell you to present your problem in the most polite, respectful, non-emotional way possible? And who has done it in here? I just want to know because I want to meet you. Right. Nobody does that. And so why would it be reasonable for us to expect anybody who has trauma to respond in any kind of way other than the way they do? Right? So there's that. So let's pay attention. So yes, it's not just one-sided. We have to understand people are walking in with their biases too. They're walking in with their prejudices too. And you will feel them the same way that they would feel yours, correct? We just acknowledge it. Because if we acknowledge that, then we can also see that too when it's coming. All right. Last thing is we have to identify our common values and problem-solving styles. And I'm going to go through them in a minute, so we'll kind of find out what those are. But here's the deal. When I think about this from a trauma-informed perspective, this is the philosophy that I use. I tell people, if you want to go beyond diversity, meaning we're going to go beyond looking at people's differences, then we have to be able to see beneath, beyond, and past the obvious and not so obvious differences. The obvious ones are pretty easy to say, you're not like me. But there are a lot of things that people assume, we assume. Like, for example, as a marginalized person, as a minority in this country, up until recent years, because I think we're pretty even, coming even now with the brown people, but I'm 64, so you get where I'm coming from, right? I would say that in this instance, I have had to learn how to speak the way I speak, how to present the way I present, how to move in this world in a dominant culture in order to survive. People make a lot of assumptions, though, that I have the same values as dominant culture, which I don't. People make a lot of assumptions that because I can speak English fairly well, that it is my first language. It is not. You have to go beneath, beyond, and past the obvious and not so obvious differences. All right? One of the things I love doing for UC Davis Center Human Services is to do an all-day diversity training, and then at the very end, say, and help them see through this process, and then to say, you know, and as a multiracial gay woman, check it out. And then the folks are like, and she's gay too? She doesn't look gay. She's not dressed gay. How can she be gay? And old. I'm just saying, obvious and not so obvious. You also have to move to this intention to eliminate the us and them. You have to have an intention to eliminate the us and them. So I'm going in making a we. I'm going in to find what we have in common. Seek and you shall find. Seek and you shall find. You want to look for difference, you're going to find it, right? You want to find people with attitude, just look. Just say that today. I'm going to go hunt out everybody with attitude. I'm telling you, they're coming out of the woodwork. If you want to seek and find people who are happy, you're going to find them. You seek and find what you have in common with somebody, and you will find it. That's the really big thing. So that takes a lot more work on our ends, and this is part of that. So let's move on to the next thing. We want, you know, here's the thing I also want to add. I want to add this, don't be afraid of connecting heart to heart. Because here's the deal. Human services, not thing services, not stuff services, human services. We can't forget as human beings, we have a heart. And every one of us knows what it's like to be disrespected, dismissed. Every single one of us knows fear and anger. Every single one of us knows humiliation and embarrassment of some sort. Do we not? We already got that in common then, huh? Don't forget that. Do not professionalize your heart out of this work. This is human services. And people whom you don't have much in common with on the outside, the one thing all human beings have in common with is they can feel your heart. People can feel when you communicate to them that they matter and that you understand. Let me give you an example of that. Lastly, I'll just mention this last one, then I'll tell a little small story. We have to, as we're bridge builders, we have to intend to be the solution, part of the solution and not the problem. All of these are just conscious intentions on our part whenever we're sort of integrating this into our life. I am also, as an executive director, this is what I've been doing for a really long time, but the more important part, I think, of my journey that causes me to be here for these 40 years in this field is that I'm a child survivor of violence. I am a survivor of sexual assault. I was raped at 3. I am a survivor of multiple sexual assaults and multiple suicide attempts. The last one happened when I was 20 years old, and this is the snippet of the story I'll share. After 20 years of one thing after another, one traumatic event after another, both inside the home and outside the home, by the time I was 20, I had made a conscious intention, a premeditated intention to murder myself. That's what suicide is, a conscious, premeditated intention to murder yourself. This is when I'm 20, and this is just after the last experience of a gang rape at 20 in college. I'm like, I want an do-over. I don't want to do this anymore. I cannot imagine that the next 20 years of my life will be any better than the first 20 years of my life. And so I'm up in Colorado in the Rocky Mountains, and I'm on a retreat. And you know how y'all pray for a sign when you're on a retreat? You know how y'all pray for a sign? Let me add a piece of wisdom that I got today I didn't have then. When y'all pray for a sign, you have to add this part. Make me wise enough to see the sign. So there's my wisdom for you today. Make me wise enough to see the sign, but I was 20 years old, and how wise are you when you're 20? Not. So didn't see any signs. I had already made up my mind to take my life, so I was really just looking for an affirmation. I wasn't looking for an intervention. As I'm walking down this trail, I head toward the sound of a river, and I'm thinking this must be an answer to my prayer. I had already tried to kill myself 3 times before, and I was very angry that I had not succeeded. I was determined. I heard the sound of water. I thought it was my answered prayer. I can't swim. So as I stepped toward this river in this great canyon, and you know, the river gives you 2 chances if you're wise enough to see it, but again, wasn't wise enough then. But when you step out into the river, you're actually on a ledge, and that water rolls over your feet, and that ledge can go out 10 feet, 2 feet, but eventually it drops into a canyon. And then my thing, the water spirits just kind of take you along. Well, here's the deal. I'm looking at this canyon, and I'm seeing this angry water crashing down through this canyon. And I'm thinking how much like my life this river is. Seemed like I was just born in the middle of crap. I don't know when it started, and I don't think it's going to ever end. And when I look downstream, I see these giant boulders jetting out of the river. And I think that's just like my life when I think I get one step, just one thing I can do, and then boom, something else happens. So as I'm looking at this river, I'm thinking to myself, me and this river, we are one. So I go to take that first step of peace, and here's the thing I'm going to tell you as survivors. Well, we don't have a fear of death. We have a fear of life and living. Death is the end of it. Living means more of the same. So I go to take that, first step of what I think is going to be peace, and I feel 2 hands pull me out of the river. And when he turns me around, there's an old white man. And what you need to understand is that white folks are folks I learned at 3 I should be afraid of. And so to see a white man pulling me out of a river, my first thought was, well, this can't be good. This cannot be good. But then I saw him again, and tears were flowing down his face. And he said only 2 words to me, and those words were, you matter. You matter. And in that moment, I felt understood. You see, all these years, and it's been 44 years now since that happened, and I've told this story everywhere I go in the world. Here's the thing I know about all human beings, no matter where we come from. Every single human being wants to know that you matter and that you're understood. For if you know that you matter and that you are understood, then we can solve anything. Well, that professor, he was a visiting professor, and I was out on a retreat. He made a phone call to the university, and he called his colleague, and he said, I got a young woman here with a broken heart and a wounded spirit, and I want you to do whatever it takes to help her mend it. Don't do it for her. Just do whatever it takes to help her mend it. Meaning they already knew that I was strong. He already knew that I could do it. I just needed someone to show me how. That's a very important assumption you can make about survivors. We're already strong. We survived it. We're already strong. We survived it. We just need to know now how to take the next steps. So if you make the assumption that we're already strong and we can connect to that part, and you're going to help us use our already strengths to get us out of this dang river and out of this canyon and to climb our mountain, then that's all we need. I'm telling you, this is the truth, and it seems so simple, but it is absolutely what every one of you in here needs, everyone out there needs every single day. Is it not right? It doesn't matter if you're your supervisor, you're a coworker, when you're going through something, you just want to know that you matter to somebody and that somebody wants to understand. So I'm saying when we build bridges, we don't always have to understand. We don't have to have the same experience, but you can say, I don't understand, but I want to. Can you help me understand our trauma-informed ways of extending yourself? And for underserved folks, especially non-English speaking folks, that goes a long dang way. That goes a very, very long way. So I wanted to mention that. All right, here we go. So these are our trauma-informed perspectives. We want to hang on to that. This is how we can be that solution, right? Am I going again? Oh, this is so exciting to me when that happens. All righty. When we talk about cross-cultural communications, or when we talk about the underserved, we talk about our positions as providers versus their position as clients, then I want you to think of it as in the context of power. I want you to think of it in the context of who has the power. Who has the power? If you think of it in that context, it'll make it so much easier for you. So you see, people whose greater formal and informal power, we tend to impose our values, not on purpose, but we're in this position and we tend to impose what we believe are important. For example, I think the biggest thing we do is with these friggin' forms. Let's talk about forms as imposing values onto people. When they come in, and I know we all get into our form thing and we have times and amount of time, we got to move that form along and move the form along to the next thing instead of, say, moving the person story forward, right? So this is what I do, okay? If there's any supervisors in here, you now have to, these people will play the fifth, so you may not give them any, retribution after they own this part. But how many of you, just raise your hand and nobody look at anybody except just look at me so nobody will know, think forms are stupid? Have you ever filled out a stupid form ever in your life? And the people who are making you fill them out are trying to act like it's an important form. Don't you think that they're stupid too? Yes, okay, this is my point. This is the only point I'm trying to make. Some forms are really stupid, and they're really stupid when you're hurting. They're really, really, really stupid when you're afraid. And they make a person feel like you don't care, you don't matter, and you don't understand. So we got stupid forms. Here's what I do. Accountability. I say to the survivor, we're about to take 10 minutes to fill out a really stupid form, okay? Because the system needs us to fill out this stupid form. And after we fill out the stupid form, then you and I will deal with what we need to deal with. So let's just get that over with. We don't care about what we say. We're just going to fill it out and move the form along. And then you and I will talk about what you need. Just that simple little thing like that. Boy, them forms get done in 10 minutes, and then we get to the point. Because what do I want to do? Help the person, not fill out the form. You have to decide. You want them to fill out the form, or you want to help the person. You know what I'm saying? It's form services or it's human services. I don't know. You decide. All right. That's kind of where you have to go with that. Make sense? So I want us to understand that we may not feel like we're trying to have power over people, but walking in this building doesn't seem like some little, shamby, flim-flummy little kind of place. This is kind of a big old government building. You know what I'm saying? And I commute down here because I'm living that way out on the outside of town. So when I have to come down here, I'm like, whoa. I didn't see the stadium there getting built. Oh my God, it's big. When you actually drive down the street, like, this is humongous. How can anybody do anything in here? So it's kind of scary. And so I'm thinking about that from my context. I don't live down in here. This is a whole nother culture into itself. Every organization has a culture. And so just coming down here is very intimidating. It's extraordinarily intimidating. And you don't get the chance to create your environment like I get to create a community for peace where it looks like a spa. That's why everybody wants to come in there. So you're a government building, so you're going to have to be the spa, huh? You're going to have to be the one that's soothing and comforting. So if a form is stupid, just you be the first to say it, so then that way they think you're intelligent. Correct? All right, number B. The thing that I also want us to understand is the less formal and informal power, that person will adopt non-primary cultural strategies to stay safe, to survive, to be accepted. So if I say yes to something, doesn't mean I really value it, but you're in a position of power. So I'm going to adopt a non-primary cultural strategy, which is I will go to court, I will fill out the TRO, I will do all these things that have nothing to do with what I really believe or value. But I'm doing them because you have power and you told me I needed to do them. So I will be cooperative and I will do them. I'm just saying to you, don't assume though that I'm valuing what you're valuing. Don't assume. If I have least power and I perceive it, it doesn't have to be for true, it just has to be a perception of, then don't assume that. So not making assumptions, really important thing, huh? So here we go. The person with less formal power will adopt and use powers. And so what happens is if you set out expectations, then an underserved person or a person who perceives themselves to have less power will just adopt to it. This is what we have to do. Okay. You need to go here, 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 here. Okay. I really stress this hard to CPS. You're making them go here, 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 here. And you're saying this is a cooperative victim? I'm like, not necessarily, but she wants her kids back and she's just trying to fill the squares for you and make you feel better so you're not frustrated. Because if you get frustrated, you'll be impatient. And if you get impatient, you'll get intolerant. If you get intolerant, you'll start threatening to take your kids. So she knows what she's doing. What is she doing? I said, playing you. That's all right. We know how to do that. Survivors have to figure that out right away. Who has the power? Who has the power? Guess what? Immigrants have to figure that out too. Who has the power? Non-English speaking people, who has the power? So this is what I mean by thinking about diversity in this context and your role as the person who has the power. You may not feel that you do. You may not be all into having power, but from that perspective, yes, you do. You have a lot more power than the person you're serving at that time. All right. The person with greater power will less likely see that other person is adopting to you. You'll just think we're agreeing. So you'll less likely see the conflict we have and that our values may be different. And then sometimes the minority person will just simply hide their own feelings. And that can be a cultural context and a cultural value, but it can also be not a safe environment. So I don't want to express how I really feel. I'm gonna hold this like this. Now, the interesting thing is people impacted by trauma do the same thing, don't they? So they're not expressing their emotions either. So you don't know if this is an underserved situation or an impacted trauma, but it's the same difference. The approach is the same, all right? So what is culture? Culture has nothing to do with color, although color can influence some of that, and we assign that, but culture is really about values and beliefs, communication styles, and problem-solving styles. That's what culture is. Food is more culture, right? Music. So values and beliefs. Every organization has values and beliefs. Your little family systems they're all cultures. Every little group has their own set of values and beliefs, their way they communicate. Don't y'all have your way of communicating in the system? You even have your acronyms. You know, like you can say CalVCP and everybody knows what that means, but other people don't. You know what I mean? So you even have your own language, and you have your ways of solving problems within this cultural context. That's true for everybody. Just think about your family right now. Don't your family have a way of talking that is not the same as if you were like here at work, right? Don't you have another way of being? Yeah, that's another form. Don't you understand that how you solve problems here is not necessarily how you would do it in your family? Correct? Right. So we can swing. It means that nobody is hard. We're not fixed in our culture. That's what I want you to understand. We're not fixed in our culture. No one is. It's a global world anymore. We're not fixed in our culture. So we swing at any given time. And the more conscious you can do that, the more flexibility you have and the more you walk with what I call cultural and personal power. So communication styles and framework, that's the framework in which we see everything, and we create every problem solving the way we think about things. So let's go through it this way. Instead of assigning culture with any ethnic or racial group, I just divided the world into A's, B's, and C's. That's good, huh? So that we can stay more objective. So here's what I want you to think about as I'm going through these things. Find what you have in common with these groups, all right? Don't think about what you don't have in common. Only think about what you have in common. If you're taking notes, only take notes on what you have in common. Because if you start down and writing down everything, you won't remember it. But if you write down what you have in common, it's personal, you'll remember it. And that's all you need to build. So culture A. If I'm from culture A, one of my top values is education. Knowledge. Knowledge is power, education, right? So I like going to workshops. I like going to school. I know as a mom, if I'm culture A, and my child doesn't want to go to school on Thursday just because the child doesn't want to go to school on Thursday, that's not happening. All right, you wait till you graduate from high school, then talk about what you're not going to do. All right, so I'm saying that, then you know the education is a value for you. Security. Security is a very top value. So what I want to say about culture A security is holistic. Think holistic, right? So when you think about security, it's not just about fiscal security or physical security. It's also about mental security. And I don't know, but if there's survivors in here, but I can tell you about our survivors, the number one thing that makes us nuts is people thinking we're nuts, right? So that crazy making tactics of psychological abuse is already a thing where mental safety becomes so important. All you have to do is to do a journey with somebody who has Alzheimer's to know mental safety is important. So mental safety, emotional security. Emotional security is another safety of culture A. That means I get to express my emotions the way I need to express my emotions. I have the freedom to do that. And so sometimes in culture A, the way they express their emotions is no affect. It's all internalized. And just because culture A then internalized emotions doesn't mean they don't have any. Just because nobody's yelling and nobody's screaming and that there's nothing on the face doesn't mean there's not still waters run deep and that there's not a lot of turbulence going on inside. Y'all have done that, right? Like, for example, anybody ever, you don't have to raise your hand on this one. Anybody ever been pulled over by law enforcement and that's not necessarily the time to express all your emotions? You know what I'm saying? We try to be a little more polite during that period of time, and all this is not necessarily going to be helpful. If you go to court, this is not necessarily going to be helpful. So I'm just saying, if you've ever been in a situation where you have big emotion and you're not allowed to express it, it's like pushing a beach ball under the water. How long are you gonna hold it down there? Something gonna pop up, right? Y'all know what I mean? I know you do. All right. The idea of culture A has strong ancestral ties. So they're very blood related in their family, very kinship oriented by bloodline, ancestral ties, which also means that culture A folks really value traditions. And when you value traditions means that it's really kind of hard to make those quick changes, huh? Like, for example, I don't know about you, but here's my culture A. It's not Thanksgiving unless you have the Thanksgiving menu. Know what I mean? Like, that menu has not been different since I was 11 years old. And I don't mind other people bringing stuff, but we got to have the main menu because then it's not Thanksgiving. I do not try Emeril Lagasse's new recipe to the day before Thanksgiving or the day after, but never on that day because then it's not Thanksgiving. You know that you're about traditions, and most of us figure that out when we get married, because some of us have Merry Christmas Eve and some of us have Merry Christmas Day. And us day people looking at the Eve people like, what happened to your sugar plums? Aren't you supposed to have some plums and things? And we're supposed to be like all psyched all night long for the big guy to come on down and do the thing. What you breaking out these presents for now? What is this? This is not Christmas. You see? And other people are like, well, we came from midnight mass and this is what we kind of like to do. We're like, but what happened to the sugar plums? We're just talking about the sugar plums. Where are the plums? There's nothing happening. No fairies, nothing's happening. There's no magic. You're supposed to wake up and have magic. That's when you know you're traditional, correct? Right, okay. So that's what I mean by traditions. And very hard to change that, huh? We got to do a lot of negotiating to change Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. So some of us say, one present at Christmas Eve. That's the compromise. One present at Christmas Eve, sugar plums still come, big presents in the morning. Okay, that's a compromise. You get what I'm saying? That's what we have to do, but that's how you know you're in a traditional place. It's very hard to change traditions, slow to change. The basic backdrop of thinking is don't rock the boat. Don't rock the boat, because it's about we versus I. And what's harmony for the whole is harmony for the I. All right? So if I don't rock the boat, then being big in my emotional expression, being big and telling truth is not necessarily something I'm going to do, huh? If you don't rock the boat. The nice thing to do, I don't know if you ever, because I don't do get on boats or water, as you might now know from my story. However, I'm thinking that rocking the boat when you're in one on some deep water is not necessarily the fun thing to do. And it's really hard to stand up when the boat be like this. And it's really hard to move forward when the boat be like this, right? So I'm saying you tend to stand still and see what else is happening and move when everyone else says move. You don't go independently on your own like, I'm bailing out of this boat, I'm out, okay? No, it's a we thing for survival. I'm really wanting us to understand that because it makes a difference when it comes to making decisions to change. My form of communication is a fancy way of saying indirect inward means no affect, means I'm agreeable, means I'm not going to confront, I'm not going to create any disharmony in our communication, and I'm only going to answer what you ask. I'm not going to give you any more than what you ask. So if you say, would you like this? Yes. There's no more to that story if I'm culture A, because I don't know if any more is going to rock the boat. All right? But here's another thing about culture A, folks, and not rocking the boat in the harmony. Sometimes it's even hard to go get help because you have to get help sometimes in secret because your community or your family doesn't believe in stepping outside of your community and your family to get help. So sometimes just even asking for help is rocking the boat. All right? No affect, part of my emotional response, and one of the reasons I say these things, values, beliefs, communication styles, problem-solving styles, because when you're talking to people, this is how you pick out those values. You just got to listen to them for about 5 minutes. And if you listen for 5 minutes, you start to understand what is important to them, how do they do it before, right? What's their frustration, their blocks and barriers? Just listen to them for the first 5 to 7 minutes after you do the stupid form thing, right? Because that'll get it out of the way. The form thing is very intimidating for people who do not speak English, and for all the rest of us who do. It's just intimidating for everybody, right? Because nobody really likes, do you like forms really? Even though really they're easier than the blue books when we were in college and had to write it all out and the whole essay thing, but I like that better because I could bullshit it better, you know what I'm saying? The form thing doesn't leave room for like extenuating circumstances. The form thing doesn't leave room for the trauma-informed actually talk or the story. So you have to kind of do the yes, no, and most of my answers are kind of in between that. So as a trauma survivor and victim, I'm not going to have a yes, no. I'm going to have a sort of everything in between. And maybe a yes, and I don't know, maybe a no. But everything in between is the real stuff. So little or no emotional. So when I'm very, very upset, it's going to be the same thing I'm under really a lot of stress. You're not going to get that either, because it's important for me to not rock the boat, and blowing up or having big emotional expression would be rocking the boat. So I have no affect, so you do not know, but there is a huge thing happening internally. There is a humongous thing happening internally. So when culture A's have a difficulty, their first tendency is to self-blame, is to blame the self. Even as a victim of crime, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? Even if I did nothing wrong, culture A wants to tend to blame the self. What did I do wrong, right? Victims of domestic violence and sexual assault go there too. What did I do wrong? And systems oftentimes do the same thing. What did you do wrong? So that victim blaming is one way to shoot you in the foot of being any trauma-informed building bridges. So internalized thing. And so how do I deal with problems if I'm culture A? Here's the thing. What problem? I have no stress if there's no problem. So what problem? Denial. Denial is my problem-solving style. Denial and minimization. Denial and minimization is also the coping strategy of most trauma survivors, right? Because it's too big and too overwhelming to feel, so we break it out into little tiny pieces. But what I want us to understand here is that denial minimization is about a problem that I can't speak about, that I can't express emotionally because it's going to rock the boat, and I don't know if I have permission by the greater whole to be doing this. So sometimes the barrier isn't necessarily you. Sometimes the barrier comes from a cultural context of the group that person belongs to. So in my case, when I went to go see the therapist, which is outside of my cultural context, therapy, because therapy in my culture means that you're broken. And in my culture, we don't believe that people get broken. They just have craps happen to them, right? And when you can figure out how much tougher and stronger you are, that you endured all those things, and how not to create a circumstance for you, but it's not about you being broken and weak. And so it makes it very difficult for me, even cross-culturally, for me to go sit with a therapist, because it's not even in my cultural context. In my cultural context, I would think, well, this is me giving you a job, because I'm paying you to have a job. But all you're helping me do is manage what I can already do by not dealing with it. See? Because if I come to you, then you're going to make me talk about it, right? We're not talking about something else. Nobody comes to my office to talk about, you know, how's that stadium going? Right? They don't come here to talk about that. These people come in here talking about it. And it is sometimes really hard to talk about, let alone feel about, let alone think about. All right, so I want us to understand that. When I talk about people under stress or threat, you go to your dominant culture. Under stress or threat, you'll go to your dominant culture. So what that means is that when people coming in the door under stress or threat is the easy way to know their dominant culture, right? So if I'm culture A under stress or threat, here's what it looks like. Self-blame, I get quiet, I withdraw, I isolate, and I probably don't make my appointment. There's the highest rate of suicide among culture A people. The highest rate of suicide among culture A peoples. Okay? So that's one of the ways I can talk about that. Culture A peoples, and I always think about anger as being a way to express stress, because that's kind of what we see. So just because culture A does not like to express emotion doesn't mean, I always think about they don't get angry. And when it comes to anger, you all know this is a human being, right? Just you can raise your hand on this one to create an environment of accountability. When you get angry, don't you have like a sort of thought of revenge? Oh, come on. You know you do, right? Yes, you do, right? Okay, here's the thing. Because like sometimes you're so angry, and what you do is you sort of think, oh God, I just wish. And then you're like, no, that's not good. That's probably not really good. Don't have that good thought. It's not a good thought. And then there's other of us who's like, yeah, yeah, that would be, but no, okay, no, that's not good. So we very rarely act on that thought, but we have it, all right? Culture A does revenge too. Their thing is called what goes around comes around, karma. Culture A is very patient to wait for karma to come along. It don't have to be this generation. We can wait for the next generation. We can wait for the one after that. So, you know, trying to have some humor, but I kind of think Indian gaming is like that. You know what I'm saying? Karma. All right. Culture B. Culture B. So my number one values in culture B is family, just like culture A. But the difference of culture B is I do adopted families. I do extended families, right? So culture B people have a lot of aunties and uncles and grandmothers and grandfathers and folks that are part of the road, but they're not related by blood, but they have adopted them. Culture B people like to create family sort of environments, a work family, a church family, a girlfriend hanging out family. And so when we think about family for culture B, then our first value is that. So then, you know, other people taking care of our family kind of doesn't work out because it's our family. We take care of our own, right? And so the value for family, just like in culture A, is we-oriented versus I. And so in culture B, it's about happiness. Hey, as long as my family's happy, right? And they're happy and everything's good, everything's good. But as soon as somebody in my family's not happy, not good. If I come here to talk to you and you ask me to do this and this and this, and it's not make my family happy, I'm not doing it. Press charges does not make my family happy, I'm not doing it. Make sense? Happiness in the family. The other part of it is that I think this is aloha spirit, really, sort of very aloha. Generosity, reciprocity. So generosity would see a culture B people's very giving. Here, I brought, you know, here's how we all know we do culture B. It's that holiday time when we all gain 10 pounds because everybody's being generous, right? I got the cookies this time, you got this one this time. So our little snack room is overfilled with snacks because we're being generous. Yes, and then we're all on a diet for our generosity in January, right? So, but here's the reciprocity part. We don't just give, we expect stuff to come back. Oh, hello, culture B. So culture B says, hey, I say to Shannon over here, let's go get a cup of coffee. And she's like, okay, cool. So I pay for coffee. That's cool, right? And so then maybe a day or two later, where she's hanging out by coffee, I'm like, hey, let's have some coffee. So we have some coffee, and I pay for coffee again. And on the third time, you know, she's like, I'm going to go to some coffee. Want to go? I'm like, yeah, but I don't take my purse. Because I'm trying to see if somebody else going to spring for some coffee before I bring out that wallet. If girlfriend does not bring out that wallet and pay for my coffee, there will not be a fourth cup of coffee. Y'all know about that. So that's what I mean by generosity, reciprocity. I can give and give and give, but up to a point. And then after that, where is it? Coming back. All right. So I'm saying we ask a lot of the people we serve. What can we give them back? Can we give concern back? Can we give compassion back? Can we give patience back? Can we give them the time to say what they need to say? Can we give them understanding that it's not going to make sense when it comes out, and that we can help them care their way through? We can care for them way through articulating what we need them to say to us so we can actually help them. What can we give them back for all the effort they took to come here and get past that barrier to even come in this building that's scary, right? So that's part of that generosity I think about. What is the form of, there's no separation from culture B from their everyday life and their spirituality. So culture B peoples might see, if the culture B peoples in here, would see this work as part of their spiritual ministry. This is me living out loud my spirituality. This is me living out loud my spiritual values. And so there's not a separation between church and state in that way. I don't feel all sacred only on one day a week. So I understand this, and this is the way I say it. You see yourself as sacred. You understand you are an instrument of the Creator. Then you have been placed. And that person who's in front of you has been placed for you to serve. And so that's how a culture B person might experience this and look at their work. What is their form of communication? Is inward, outward. What does that mean? Here's how. Raise your hand if you were raised this way. The communication style called the power of hinting. How many was raised with hinting? Just go ahead, raise your hand if you were raised with hinting. Yes. So see, it's very effective forms of communicating, right? Hinting. Because here's the deal. You don't know what it's about. And so when culture B people are communicating, it's not just the words. That's what power of hinting means. There's a lot more that goes with it. Here's, for example, 3 parts to communication for culture B. Really easy for culture A, not communicating. Okay? Going to be compliant and acquiesce. That's culture A. Culture B. Culture B communicates like this. First step, nonverbals. Okay, what could that mean? Someone yell it out. I'm disgusted. What else could it mean? Frustrated. What else? Impatient. But we don't know for sure, right? Okay, so then you have to go to part 2, is the hint. Sure, I'm tired. Okay, what could that mean? Taking too long. What else? I could be that I am tired. What else? Yes, it could be I'm sick of work, I'm annoyed, whatever, but we still don't know, do we, for sure? No, because then you need to have the third part. This third part is context. If I said, I sure am tired, and I said it walking in the front door of my house at the end of the day, what's my family understanding that to mean? Give me away, I'm not cooking, and don't nobody bring me no bad news. Correct? See, we're going to be more accurate when you have 1, 2, 3, correct? So for culture B communication, it's the nonverbal, it's the hint, and it's the context. So remember that, right? That's very important, because if you miss that, then you're going to be going down the whole wrong, you're taking the football down the wrong way of the field. Under stress or threat, culture B is going to blame. It's the system, it's this, it's everything outside. Culture B will tend to blame outside, where culture A tends to blame inside. Culture B tends to blame outside, right? And so what is their form of problem solving? Well, it's this. It's not a problem yet. Not a problem yet. Here's how y'all know your culture B this way. There are people in this room who have actually said to themselves, I should go get my teeth cleaned. I think I should have a dental checkup, you know. But I got too many appointments and my calendar's full, and well, it's just not a problem yet. There are people in this room who actually even said to themselves and someone else, I need to get my car tuned up. You know, it's been a while since I had my oil changed. I think I need to get my car tuned up. But you see, I got lots on my plate right now, so it's not a problem yet. What happens when you wake up at 7 in the morning with your jaw next to you on the pillow? It's over there. It's kind of a problem now, isn't it? It doesn't matter what your appointment book says, huh? It doesn't matter if the governor was on your appointment book. You want that appointment with the dentist and you want it at 6 o'clock. You know you don't get up that early. But on that day, it's a problem. And we want it now. So culture B people tend to be crisis-oriented. Crisis-oriented. So what that means is this. I was doing this one time to DHA, eligibility workers, right? And someone saying to me, you know, this is a family that's been on aid. They've been on aid like forever. They've been on aid like generations. Don't they think they know it's going to run out by the end of the month, every month? So how come they don't come in like a week ahead of time? And I said, because they had food then. Pretty simple, they had food then. Wasn't a problem then. You see, but their family came to visit them. over the weekend, and they weren't just budgeting for that. And so they had to have this big feast. And so now it's the 29th and they've got no food. It makes sense to me. You see? So you see the difference in expectations and cultural values, right? All right, culture B. Culture B sees we versus I and their anger. Whoa, when culture B gets angry, it looks like this. Culture B does not get angry right away. You see? Culture B goes along with file cabinets. This is the way I say it. So if you make me mad the first time, I'm gonna take a deep breath. I'm gonna open up that file cabinet, but I'm gonna put this incident in the file cabinet. Yeah, I ain't letting it go, but it's going in the file cabinet. And when it happens the next time, I'm like, I hope this ain't no pattern. But I'm gonna take the incident because I'm gonna deal with it right now. And I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna put it in the file cabinet. When that thing happens a third time, I say to myself, self, something don't seem right here. But just on the off chance, but I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna put it in the front of the file cabinet. Because on that fourth time, I open up the file cabinet. See, when you get to that fourth time, you don't get real loud yet. You get real quiet. Culture B gets real quiet. That's when you need to worry. Open up the file cabinet, pick up all the files. And this is the point in time when your memory becomes crystal clear. And you say, wasn't it you on July 14th at 9 o'clock in the morning in this kitchen, wearing that ugly purple shirt that your mother gave me that I'm trying to get rid of for 6 months? Wasn't it you who said to me, honey, I'll go fix that fence? Wasn't that you? And then on Labor Day, when we was trying to have the picnic in our backyard, but we couldn't have the picnic. Why couldn't we have the picnic? No fence. And then on Thanksgiving, when we have the traditional Thanksgiving football playing in our backyard, which we could not have this year and had to move to a park. Why? Because the fence was not fixed. And another thing, boom, 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 boom. And here's the thing about culture B. You may not interrupt the culture B in the middle of the file cabinet, or you will get 15 more minutes of culture B, correct? Yeah, y'all know what I'm saying. And you know it's over because then culture B goes like this. Want something to eat? And it's done. Correct? Y'all know what I'm talking about. See, I got culture B's in here like, ooh, she in my house. All right, so I'm saying that so I want us to understand that anger of the moment for culture B isn't the anger of the moment. It isn't the incident. It's the experience with that person. It's the experience with that system. It's the experience with that over and over and over again. It's not a one-time thing, okay? I said it this way to Chief of Police. I said, you know, y'all people get loud and kill people. Culture B doesn't get that loud when they're gonna kill people. We never announced a drive-by, not once. It was never announced. It's just quietly done, move on. I said, so it's a myth that you think culture B is very loud. Culture B stores it up until that moment. And that's when you usually hear us say, you're on my last nerve. All right. So if culture A likes karma, they wait and be very patient. It could be another generation. Culture B people, we like to be involved with the karma, like personal involvement with the karma. It's much more satisfactory when you can be personally involved with the karma. Of course, you end up in jail a lot, but anyway. So culture C, wait, let me go back to that. So culture C, if I'm culture C, so A's and B's, their orientation is we versus I. For culture C, the orientation is I versus we. All right? If I look at my relationship with authority and I'm culture A and B, then authority goes this way. There's somebody at the top. Somebody has a supervisor. In culture B, the authority isn't necessarily by title. But in culture B, you have what is recognized by the group, the family, as someone who has that authority. So it might be the wise grandmother, it might be the grandfather, it might be the auntie, it might be someone in a unit their family unit or extended family that they consider the authority. So just because you're sitting in this building does not make you the authority. It makes you have a job. Just need you to be clear that this is a job for you, not an authority. But culture A will see you as an authority, and culture B may not necessarily see you as the authority because theirs is family. Make sense? I really want you to get that. So it's not that culture B sometimes trying to be disrespectful, but that's how that works. So if I move over here to culture C, then culture C orientation is I versus we. All right? A wants harmony. B wants happiness and harmony. C wants happiness and harmony too. Everybody wants the same thing, just got 3 different ways of getting there. Okay? That's what makes for cross-cultural conflict. So if I'm culture C, personal freedom kind of important. I have the right to be free. And I have the right to determine my destiny. And just because my dad was a barber, my grandfather was a barber, and the one before that was a barber, by God, I want to be a social worker. And I get to change that and go do my own thing. So culture C believes in the right to self-determination, the right for self-reliance. Hey, culture C believes in change, right? Innovativeness. Why do things the same old way when you find better ways to do it? Culture C. Culture C is also direct and outward in its communication. Here's my issue. I'm stressed out. That's what I need to have happen. What would be the more effective way of communicating? Culture C, huh? Name the issue, what you need. Yeah, but most of us don't really live there, huh? When it's emotional, we kind of live more in the A and B area. Correct? In your own life. We don't come right out and say, when we're so trauma, that this is what we can say directly with our issue. No, we don't tend to do that. So if you name the issue and say what is needed, then we can save it. But here's the deal. If I have a whole bunch of I's, a whole bunch of ones, I's versus we, then what am I going to use to make sure we have order? You see, rules. We got to have rules and policies and procedures and laws. And so isn't that what we say, culture C? If everybody would just follow all the rules, and if the rules would just like apply to everybody equally, and then like we'd all have harmony, right? So like if everybody just follow the rules. But see, only culture C believes in rules. That's a problem. That is a really big friggin' problem when you only have one group of people who believe in the rules and the rest use customs and norms as a way to guide behavior. Make sense? So culture A has traditions. I don't need someone to tell me what Thanksgiving is about. I kind of know what that's about. And I really don't need anyone to help me with that. I pretty much know when to take the turkey out, when I begin, and it always ends up at 2:30 on Thursday. Thanksgiving, we always eat at 2:30. And I know exactly what I need to do, and so my schedule is pretty set. Correct? That's my rule, tradition. If I'm culture B, my rule is depending upon who the matriarch or patriarch of that group is telling me the rule is. So this year, Thanksgiving's over at grandmother da-da-da's house. Or this one says so and okay, that's where it is. Doesn't matter if you wanted it at your house, that's where it's going to be. And that's where we all go. So the rules for culture B are familial, they're customs. Culture C, they're written down in your handbook. Okay? Read it, initial it, and make yourself thoroughly familiar with the vernacular that's in there, whether you understand it or not, correct? All right, use or lose and all that. All right, so they need rules and guidelines to create harmony for the whole. Culture C gets mad too. Culture C gets angry too. Culture C wants revenge too. That's what lawsuits are for. Because we use the rules, we file a suit, that's how we do it, or we give you a bad performance evaluation or something like that. That's how we use a system, is what we do. Got it? All right, culture C. So if we look at those, raise your hand if you can find something you have in common with A, B, and C. Right? That means you have something in common with the whole world already. Isn't that nice to know? Right, so how do we make this work for us then? Well, here's the one more thing we have to understand, and that is perception. At any given time in our journey of a day, there's an us and a them. Right? So right now, you're them to my us. We got 2 us's here, and you're them. Right? In any given circumstance in the day, there's an us and them. Our goal always is, and that's how we get our stereotypes, and that's where we get our biases, is from our outside perception of what's going on. So if I'm on the inside of a culture, I view my culture very differently than how you would view it from our experiences, right? What's important to me inside my culture may not be necessarily what's important to you. And so I want us to understand this is where the problems come. It's because we're in an us and them. And as long as we're in an us and them, then we know our perspectives and our perceptions are different. As soon as we find a common we, then we're on the same page. As soon as we find a common we, we're on the same page. So at the time of the birth, all of us, we learn culture. This is the nice news about it. It's all learned. Nobody's born being culturally competent or incompetent. It's all learned, which means you can unlearn crap you don't like and learn some new crap you like. That's what it means. It's really simple. It's nice, it's good, and Culture C believes in change, so yay, right? Go get some. I want us to understand this because how we interact with each other, whether the interactions are positive or negative, are based on a couple of things. One is your clear intention and their perception. You can only be responsible for your clear intention. You can't be responsible for their perspective. Does that make sense? So we do everything we can to not contribute to a problem, but after that, you can't be responsible for how people see stuff. They got their story too. They got issues too, not just the one they're coming in with. Remember I said at the beginning, everybody's prejudiced, and they're coming in with their biases too. So you do your part as trauma-informed to make sure the environment is conducive for everything you need it to be. And then after that, you do have to let it go, because sometimes you're just not the one. Sometimes you're just not the one. And if we're trauma-informed, we don't need to be the one. We go find somebody who is. Make sense? You're looking at me like, really? We do that? Yeah, you really ought to. If you're going to do it culturally competent, that's what you would do. Because the goal is we want them to have good help. It doesn't have to come from that one person. That's the way I think about it at my team. So at Community for Peace, all of us are certified counselors, including myself, everybody on my board. Why? Because we're a we. And yes, people have their primary responsibilities, but any one of us could do it. Why do we do it that way? Because we want the right person to help that person at that time, because we got 5 minutes with them and that's it. We got 5 minutes to make this relationship strong, 5 minutes to have some trust so we can have it for the long haul. We got 5 minutes. I want the right person matching up with this person, not just any person. Trauma-informed knows that. And so here's how you're gonna start to look at each other as your greatest resources. And so what you know about each other and what's natural to each other becomes that person that becomes the great cultural broker to the person you're serving. It doesn't have to be you. So sometimes that means then from an organizational point of view, you may have to change some internal structures to make that possible. But if you're really committed to it, you will. I'm just saying that in case there's any leadership in here. All right. All right. All right, so perception and treatment. So once we have that, then here we go. If I'm on the inside of culture A, remember our stuff about culture A? So I would think of the culture as being, we're very self-reflective. That's why we don't change so quick. We got to consider everything. We got to consider what that decision will be to ripple out to everyone else that will be impacted by this one decision I make. All right, here's a good example. So when I got to the university, went back to the university, and I looked up this therapist. And so, you know, I went to see her every Tuesday at 1 o'clock. But every Tuesday at 1 o'clock, all I did was slouch down in my chair and close my arms. I didn't say anything. And so some people could look at that just on the surface and say, well, you were not interested, you didn't want to be cooperative. But here's the thing, I tell them context, right? Every Tuesday at 1 o'clock, I was on time, and I was there every Tuesday at 1 o'clock. I didn't say anything for the whole 55 minutes, but I didn't leave until it was over. I was there on time, every time, and I didn't leave till it was over. So if you're being culturally competent, you would know I'm struggling with something then. I'm indirect inward, I can't get it out. And so the therapist then at the time didn't prod, what she did was she pulled her chair next to mine and just sat. She just sat with me. Every Tuesday at 1 o'clock for at least 6 weeks, I said nothing. On that 7th time, I said to her, my dad was kind of strict and stuff happened to me. That's not quite the same thing as being raped at 3, being sexually abused at 12, being physically abused as a kid, watching domestic violence, being raped in a hate crime. That's not the same as all those little things I told you, but it is culture B, indirect hinting. My dad was strict and stuff happened to me. What took me so long to say that to her? Well, and her trauma-informed response was, I am so sorry that happened to you. And thank you for trusting me with that. I know that was really hard for you to tell me. And I didn't really tell her anything except that I'm struggling. But here's the thing that was going on the inside from the insider point of view. I'm trying to figure out, remember culture A, don't rock the boat? I'm trying to figure out how I get help for me without dissing my family. It took me 2 months to figure out what to say. So I can tell you I got something going on, but I don't want to diss my family. Does that make sense? That's what that long silence was about. It had nothing to do with not cooperating. It's me struggling cross-culturally to figure out, what do I tell you? Because I can tell you my story is not something I was ever supposed to tell in what we call mixed company. Our issues of domestic violence and family violence and sexual assault for people of color, we just don't want it outside because we know that our communities already take a hit and we don't want to add to that. So we have a cultural responsibility to our people when you're marginalized and underserved. And it's not a conscious thing, it's an unconscious and subconscious, but it plays there because it has to do with historical trauma. And I'll get there in a minute. So on the insider of culture A, I'd say we're self-reflective. I'd say we really take care to think about how it's going to impact everybody. And our thing is really, we need to make sure that everybody else has harmony if we're going to do this. Don't want it to cause any kind of disharmony. And so the lack of trusting outsiders is really big. This is one of the reasons why My Sister's House was created, right, as a DV provider. So when I was the interim director for My Sister's House, because I am part Japanese, it was very important because I got to bring that piece of what it was like for my mom and what it was like for us as, me especially as a firstborn of an immigrant non-English speaking mother, right? And so when I bring that, we understand it takes a long time for our API sisters to be able to make a decision to do something that's going to change the course of generations in our thinking, not just one person, generations in our thinking. And so their helpline, the crisis line, is not a crisis line, it's a helpline. And it's called a helpline because that's culturally competent to call it a helpline and not a crisis line. Because culture A's don't go into crisis, that would be rocking the boat. Right? Right, so it's called a helpline. And so we know that when we're working with our culture A's, here, long time to change, that means you might call that helpline, I don't know, 5, 7, 10, 12, 25, 37 times before you make a decision to go into shelter, and that's fine. And then when you go into shelter, you can stay there 3, 4, 5 months because we know it takes that long to make some big decisions about that's going to impact not just you and your children, but your generations. So I want you to understand with culture A, big, heavy responsibility for one decision for oneself. When A walks in here, they walk in with all their people. It's crowded in your little cubicle, I swear. All right, culture B. And so if I'm on the outside of culture A, right, this is an insider perspective. If I'm on the outside of culture A, I would say, boy, these people are really kind of slow. They're really not into change at all. And they're kind of clannish, like they don't even want anybody on the outside, to help them out. But that's about not rocking the boat. That's about maintaining family harmony and peace for generations. So you see the difference? But on the outsider point of view is where the stereotypes start to happen because I don't understand inside what you're valuing. Culture B. If I'm on the insider of culture B, we know that our job is to take care of our family. Nobody else is supposed to take care of that family. We're supposed to take care of that family. So this is where we know with CPS, I'll say, that's why CPS looks for extended family, et cetera, when they're going to PC a child. Culture B is not putting no child in no foster care. I don't care who. I don't care who. You the fourth cousin, you raising the child. I don't care. You related. You raising the child. That's how it works, right? We adopting somebody, raising a child. That's how it works. So culture B takes care of their own. So coming to you for compensation is kind of outside of cultural context, huh? Because that ain't taking care of our own. That's you taking care of us. I'm like, what's that going to do with the rest of the people? Right? How's that helping the rest of the people? It ain't helping the rest of the people. You can't help the rest of the people while I'm coming to you. Correct? Do you feel this sometimes? Am I preaching to the choir here? Yeah. All right, because y'all need to get a little louder in the morning here. Help me out a little bit, okay? All right, so if I'm culture B, outsiders have to find an appropriate way to become an insider. And that's in the way you converse and the way you communicate, right? So if I'm connecting with culture B, I always look for what I have in common first, right? This is the reason why when I come into a cubicle, if I'm culture B, I'm looking to see, do you have like any pictures of anybody that you could be related to that you would like? Because like if you don't have no dogs or no cats or no human beings, then you already look like somebody who can't talk to me. But you got family pictures all around. Oh, I'm like, okay, then you know about family. See, then I get that. Well, you care about something. But if you got one of them sterile cubicles, you understand? Haven't you been in something like that? Yeah, like them little waiting rooms in the doctor's office. Like, could they do a little better with that? You sitting in there 30 minutes, could they just do a little something to entertain you, make you feel like you're not sitting up someplace like this going to catch a disease or something while you're sitting up there naked? All right, I'm just saying. All right, so culture B, your job as trauma-informed is to become the insider, right? And you do that by finding what you have in common with them, even if it is children, even if it is dogs, cats. You start that conversation as one human being to another before you get to the stupid form. Make the human connection first. The rest of it will work easier. Culture C, because culture C is direct and outward, culture C is give me the form, ma'am. Let's fill it out and let's get busy. And most of us say, we want those kind of victims. We call those cooperative. What it really means is they do our work for us. We don't have to do much. That's what we mean by cooperative victim. They fill out the forms and they just want to know the resources and thank you, ma'am, I'm on my way. So I don't got to work too hard with culture C. The problem is not too many of those walk in the door. They're mostly the A's and B's that walk in the door. So you have to do a little bit more work. Alrighty? Culture C, and then really, they're not going to argue with you, just give them the rule. Here's the policy. That's it, right? All right. And culture C, because culture C believes in change, individuals who come to culture C eventually come to the place where I have the right to make personal change. Look, I don't care if you're out of the API community, I don't care if you're African American community, Latino, Hispanic community, I don't care which community we're out of. Ultimately, we don't make change till we're ready to make change, correct? Because some of y'all know you have people in your life who've been telling you about making some changes. And you have not made them yet, correct? Come on, you can confess, it's okay. You have not made them yet, why? Because it's not a problem yet, right? You know you need to, but it's not a problem yet, but you get to it. You get to it, it's on the radar, but it's just not right here yet, correct? Does that make you a bad person? No, it just means you're not ready to make the change. So what we're thinking about other people, they're not ready to make the change, not ready to make the change, we aren't either. And that's how I am. Somebody says I'm not ready to do that. I'm like, right on. Got it. Got it. Totally got it. And when you're ready, still here. That's what it means for our center. You don't got to make decisions now. I was talking to the mayor yesterday at Citrus Heights, and I'm talking about because I'm getting ready to work on with the county on opening a home for sexually exploited young girls, 12 to 14. So I'm working in that direction. And so I'm talking to the mayor and I'm talking to some city council folks there, and they're saying to me, well, they don't go press charges. I'm like, hell no. I'm not pressing any charges. Why don't they do that? I said, well, have you ever been sexually assaulted? Do you know what you have to do to press a charge and for it to go to court? And if you're people with any kind of historical trauma, you think that's something you really want to do? And I said, here's the thing. See, I'm not here for us to file a report. I'm here to serve the victim. The victim does not wish to do that. We ain't doing it. That's how that works. But I can tell you right now today, if it happened to me and I am a survivor, I might not do it either. Why not? I said, no, social justice. My America and your America are not the same Americas. And you need to get that right. And so this is some of the stuff we have to understand without being offended. But just in that simple thing like that, how come they won't press charges? Well, there you go, right? All right, so here's our barriers to cross-cultural communications as I'm taking us close to the finish line. It's like this. It's your state of mind. That's your number one barrier, because like when you're hungry, how patient are you? If you have to pee, how fast do they need to fill out that form? This is what I'm saying. Your state of being, your wellness is the key. So make sure between each and every client that you're serving that you take at least 5 breaths, stand up and say, okay, that one's over. Now the next one comes in. So I can be fresh and present for each one and not let some stuff from this one roll over and taint this one over here because it seems like the same thing, but it's not. We're all human beings in here, and every single one of us has had trauma, and every single one of us reacts to it differently, don't we? And so one way is not better than another. It's just our unique way of dealing with it. The next thing is that melting pot doesn't work, but it makes great queso. That does not do. We're not a melting pot. A melting pot means you have to give up something. I don't know about y'all if you want to give up something. I kind of like what I got. So what we're really trying to move away from is this melting pot thing into a salad bowl. Think of a salad bowl, right? Because a really good salad got a lot of stuff in it. And that stuff's got to be itself. It can't be something else. It's got the tomato got to be the tomato. And the cucumber got to be the cucumber, right? And the lettuce got to be the lettuce. It can't be switching all out what it wants to be. No. So this is what we're saying about America. Our karma in America, really, truly in the world, is that we are to be the beacon of what inclusivity looks like. We are to be the beacon of what my Native people call a whirling rainbow, where everybody is valued, everybody has equal value and worth, but we don't bring the same medicine to the world. We each have our unique gift to this world. That's our karma. We're heading there. We're hoping to. Our other barriers are when we get too busy with ourselves and we start dismissing things. If we get too fast and we're just moving on the clock and we miss the hint, we miss the sigh, we miss the nonverbals because we're just working on the words, then we're ending up dismissing and blaming behavior. Or if we just say, well, they're just loud and emotional, then we're dismissing a cultural response. We're missing a cultural response. So we miss the opportunity to address the suffering that's there. Being colorblind, not a good thing. I know we like to think about that in the 70s, 80s, but not a good thing. Here's why. You need to see me. I am made of my cultures. I am Native American, African American, German, and immigrant Japanese. You need to see me, because me is made up of all that. And that makes up how I think and how I feel and how I interact in the world. And it shapes even my understanding of my place in America. You need to see me. Colorblind is not good. It's not good at all. We need to eliminate all assumptions that clients know your role, so define your role. Here's what I mean, culture A. If culture A sees this hierarchical and you're coming in, they don't know you got a boss. They think you're it. You know everything. If you are not supposed to know everything and you don't have the authority to do everything, you need to define your role at the outset. I am the person who takes intake. I do the stupid forms, and then I take the information and I give it to the case manager, and the case manager will do this. It may seem tedious to do that, but it's very important so you don't have any cross-cultural conflict that I'm thinking you can do something that you cannot do. And you're setting yourself up for a cross-cultural conflict by not articulating that, because why? You're in the position of power. You're in the position of power when that person comes in the door. Our barriers are a lack of our own self-awareness, our lack of our own sensitivity to our own biases, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things I do want to talk about is our body language, though, because culture A's and B's really are sensitive to body language. So let me just try this out for a second. So here's one thing that's very, very difficult because culture A, remember I told you in our forms of communication is indirect and inward, which means eye contact is not the thing. Direct eye contact with culture A, bad, 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 bad. It's very intrusive. It's violating. So where do you get your cultural cues? If they ain't looking at you, don't be doing this. Like trying to make her look at you, okay? Because you look stupid doing that. Somebody did that to me, I'm like, what you doing? I'm not looking at you for a reason. I don't want to, okay? I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, but you pressed me, so that's where I went, right? Because you look stupid doing all this, trying to make me look at you. I don't want to look at you. Maybe I got some shame. Maybe it's really hard for me to come in here and talk about being raped. Maybe I got some shame about my son being murdered. Maybe I don't want to look at you because I got too much shame. I got too much grief. I don't want you to see my heart. I don't know you. Why are you making me look at you? Makes sense? Has anybody ever been on that other side? Because is that annoying when they do that to you? And don't you want to tell them that? Okay, I give you permission. Tell them that. It helps them out. You're annoying when you do that, all right? So another thing on culture B and turning body language. Look, I don't even know how your offices are or how it would be, but culture C people, the only people like you to sit right across from them and look at them. Ain't nobody else liking that. Nobody likes that. No, they don't. I am telling you the truth. They do not. So culture C, see this right here? Don't you feel like you're in some kind of a courtroom? This is culture C. Check me out. And then what do we say when they're not looking at us? You know, uncooperative, hiding something, deceiving. Well, let me just tell you something from the insider perspective from culture A's. We don't look at people who have authority because that's actually a sign of respect. So instead of saying uncooperative, you said, offer me the deepest sign of respect. That would change some things in your notes. Correct? All right. So culture C likes a direct thing. So I tend to never sit this way unless I have to do a C thing. Like we have to sit and do some forms. Then that's appropriate. But really, side by side is a little better. Or if I'm this way and that person's facing this way. So our eye contact is not direct. Culture B, A's and B's would prefer that indirect contact, eye contact, right? The other thing is this all leaning in, not good. Not good. I'm like, I need space. You lean in, I back up, right? People are like, well, I just want to get close. I'm like, I don't want to. Back your ass up. Back it up out of the drive-through, honey. This is no, we're not, you don't know me to be all up in there. See what I mean? So I want us to pay attention to that because not everybody's into that. Not everybody's into that. So they give you the cultural cues. If you pay attention, people are giving you the cultural cues about what's okay, what's not okay. So I want you to pay attention, verbal, nonverbal. And then the other thing is their view and response to you. Your job is to become an insider right away. Your job is to become a friend because danger equals difference equals danger. And so I'm trying to determine right away, you're a stranger or you're a friend, right? Friend or foe, friend or foe, friend or foe. So if I can consider you to be an ally, then I'm going to open up some cooperation. But if I consider you to be hostile and a foe, I'm shutting down. And I will tell you only what you need to know, but it's not going to be enough for you to actually really help me. Okay? Methods of communication. So, be paying attention to your forms of communication, but just because I said, that y'all talk different at home than you do over here. You talk different in church than you do over here. You talk different if law enforcement's pulling you over than you do over here. So watch your method of communication, and you have the ability to change those styles, all right? Those are the barriers to create effective communication simply. Take responsibility for what you can do to reduce prejudice in your environment. Now, here's the thing I'm gonna say to all of us who may be from underserved or marginalized communities. Hey, white allies are our allies. You gotta educate them, help them out. They don't know. They don't know. Nobody knows unless you help them out. Like you got to say, that was kind of offensive, right? You don't take it all personal, but it was kind of offensive. Let me tell you why, right? So for example, there's someone that I know that if I would get because you can tell by now I get like big energy. So, sort of imagine if I got really emotional about how big that loud that would be. They call me Thunder Beam. So I come from the Thunderbird clan of my people, which is like lightning and thunder, kind of loud, right? It's going to catalyze you, wake you up. That's how that is. But if you're not culture competent with me, when I go there, I'm not angry. I'm just pretty passionate about things and pretty fierce about things. And when people get up and close the windows, what is that saying? That's what I mean by don't do that crap. Because now there's going to be another file cabinet coming out. You don't want to have to deal with that one, right? So bridge building. So consider what you can do to overcome and push through your own barriers. You have to identify them first. The other thing is our cultural openers. So start with what they're starting with. If you just listen for 5 minutes, people will tell you what is their problem. Don't you assume what it is. Because, you know, the gas money. That's my good example. 20 bucks for gas. So let that, and then remember to share your turf. Share your turf, which means that when people come into my office, I'm like, oh, sit anywhere you want to sit, it's fine. I'm not all turf like you only sit in that chair right there because that chair is for clients and the chair over here is for these people. And no, you sit wherever you want to sit. See? And so that tells me when I give them choice where they're at. If they pick a chair that's going to be directly across from me, then I know we're ready to deal with some things. If they pick a chair that's over here, then I know I need to come this way. I let them tell me by their actions and their deeds. Make sense? All right, I'm wrapping this thing up so we can have some questions. This is just my summary about what we're trying to do is meet people where they are to get them where we want to go. The most effective forms of communication and problem solving are culture C. We got to identify them and name the resources. What I'm saying to you is nobody lives there. People live in A and B. And when you're trauma impacted, you live in A and B even more. So we got to meet people in A, get them to B, so we can do the C thing, right? Because that's where we'll solve all the problems, all right? So there's that particular thing. Unconscious bias. That's the little, you know, social political words now. Unconscious bias just means this. It comes from a lack of self-awareness about ourselves and our historical experiences. Please remember not to discount that. Our national scene right now is helping us understand that. The protests that we see across our country are about voices not being heard. That passing a law doesn't change things. It's just the law. It didn't change any minds and hearts. And so I want us to understand that people have historical experiences. And there's actually evidence now, research has been, and I wish I could quote where it comes from, but the research in terms of impact of trauma is that historical traumas actually impact your DNA. So you actually carry historical trauma from generations in your DNA. So you can tend to be hypersensitive to some things that might not be your personal experience in this life, but they are the historical trauma of your people. They are the historical trauma of your people. Here's what I said to CPS, just for example on that. I said, let me just put it in this context for you all, CPS. And we were in the context that we were talking about was in the context of the high rate of African-American children and the mortality that we're talking about that. Everybody knows about that. So what I said is this: I don't know why you berate African-American parents for not knowing how to parent. I don't know why you go. Do you know what the history is? Do you know that we weren't even allowed to have families? Do you know that when we had children, they were taken away? And if we had a mate, we didn't even get to keep that mate because we're all products, we're all property, we're all commodities, all right? And so the only way of discipline is using weapons, switches, things like that. And they were corporal punishment. So I'm wondering, for a peoples whose family units were never family units when they came here, and then they became possessions and things, and then the only discipline was weapons, how you think they're supposed to know how to parent? I just want to know about that. How do we supposed to know how to do that if it's a learned thing? So let's remember the historical context of things. At ACFP, we have an innovative program that's not done anywhere in the United States, where our domestic violence counselors ride patrol with law enforcement in Citrus Heights. It's not done anywhere. Here's a big historical trauma on my part. I ain't getting in a cop car. No. I'm a product of the 60s. I was on the other end of them hoses, them dogs, on the floor, face down. I'm not digging cops. Nope. And the chief of police knows that. I said, Chief, I'm gonna give you a chance to change me. A chance to change my mind, but you are the popo to me. I am just saying. So I'm watching you. And 9 years later, I say to the chief of police, you have changed my mind and my heart. Thank you. You're a good man. I'll give you that chance. But he understood when I said to him, Chief, you know my story because I've shared it all. And when I tell you that this would happen to me today, I would not call. You understand why? CHPD might respond well to me, but I don't believe in the rest of the system. So I'm not going to take myself through all that. I'm just not going to do it. And I said, and don't take it personal, but you have to understand my historical context. And so don't press me to do some things. So when we're out here in different parts of the county, I don't press women to get TROs. I know that's the most dangerous thing we can have them to do. I understand that if I press a TRO, that I'm likely to get her into a lethality situation because they die when they leave, not when we stay. So I want us to remember the historical contract, but that interesting research is there. And so I want us to all understand that is there. Our lack of sensitivity. Everybody in this room has a story. Everybody in this room has a story. Everybody in this room has a story. It's just not told. And everybody coming in your door has a story too. So assume that everybody has a story. You just don't know what it is. Our bias occurs when we have a lack of tolerance or compassion and understanding, and most importantly, when we don't have wellness in our lives. That's what happens, right? Here's your 10 things you can do. Be open to change, engage your brain before your mouth, take responsibility for yourself. Don't forget to share yourself. You are a human being. Don't make assumptions, allow for difference, monitor your expectations, negotiate, engage, invest in the relationships. Don't make judgments, and above all, get over yourself, right? This is actually a year-long training for me that I would do at the university. But along the side that you would see a poem that was written by our Hopi elders. So before I open it to questions, let me read the poem in its entirety so you understand why today this is the most necessary training we can be having in our world. We have been telling the people that this is the 11th hour, and now we must go back and tell the people that this is that hour. And these are the things that must be considered. Where are you living? What are you doing? Are you in right relations? Where is your water? Do you know your garden? It is time to speak your truth. Create your community and be good to each other. Do not look outside yourself for the leader, for this could be a very good time. There is a river flowing very fast now. It is so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid, and they will try to hold on to the shore, and they will feel that they are torn apart and suffer greatly. Know that the river has its own destination. The elders say we must let go of the shore, push off and into the river, and keep our eyes open and our head above water, and see who is in there with you and celebrate. At this time in our history, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment we do, our spiritual growth and our journey comes to a halt. The time of the lone wolf is over, so gather yourselves. Banish the word struggle from your attitude and your vocabulary. All you do now must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration. For folks, we are the ones we have been waiting for, but more importantly, we are the ones they are waiting for. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
You're very
Elaine.
welcome.
At this point, we'd like to take a little time to open it up to questions from our audience. For the sake of both the people here and then the people who are watching via YouTube, if you would wait until one of us runs you a microphone so we can all hear your question. So is there anyone?
Dun, 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 dun. Don't be shy. Go ahead. Anyone? Oh, come on. It was not that clear. I mean, I'll take it. Go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
No. Bring the other one. Got it?
I don't know. Okay.
Tap it.
I'll speak loud. Okay, so you spoke about a culture of, I think it's culture A, where you need time to process. And sometimes we'll have relocation expense, and we're saying, well, the incident happened X amount of months or years ago, and why are you taking so long to move? Is it okay for us to ask that? Will they respond?
I just think it's the way you do it, right? So I would say probably like, okay, well, this happened over here, and you're trying to get over here. Tell me what you did during that period of time. What were you trying to accomplish during that period of time? So the assumption is you're doing something. So that's what I want to know. I was going to therapy. I was seeing somebody. I was with my family. I was trying to figure out my finances. But you want to say, okay, so there's a little bit of a gap here, and that's okay. It's cool. Just help me understand what you filled that gap in with. What were you doing with that time? So now you're not assuming they did nothing. Always assume that victims are doing something. Not necessarily they are, but I'm saying maybe better to assume they are. Then you won't offend. And they're just like, well, I just couldn't move. I was just paralyzed. I couldn't get past it. Then you know that they're impacted by trauma. And that's the reason. So I always ask, my things with folks are always what worked, what'd you try before, what worked for you, what didn't work. So I don't want to be the stupid one telling you to do something that I already know that you already know is not going to work. So why don't you tell me what you have tried before? And then how successful was that? What worked for you, what didn't work for you? Now let me see how I can help you put it together so it'll work better for you this time. Does that help? Yeah, okay, good.
And I've done that, so thanks for.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, affirming. Yeah, it's just remember your tone and your body language and everything. If you leave your heart in it, it's all fine. People read hearts. People know when people care. I mean, that old man got cut through some stuff that was a hardened heart for sure. But you know what? A couple of tears and genuine, sincere emotion melts anything. And so I was kind of mad about it, but it did melt. Like, dang, he made me mad. Dang, now I care. It's much better when I was all hard. Okay, right? Any other questions or thoughts? Loud.
The question was, for like a culture A or culture B, say you get to the point where they do start opening up, and then they just come to a halt, like stop, like then.
Well, when they come to a halt and stop, there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I don't know actually how your process goes, but I can't imagine you're going to be with people a long period of time. Like ACFP, we see people from 2 to 3 years. So they can come in and be with us for 2 to 3 years if they want. So we have the kind of time to invest that way, right? Although not necessarily because they're victims, but so when someone tells me a story and they're going on a roll and then it cuts off right away, the first thing I just ask them is everything okay? Is everything okay? Is everything going okay? I just noticed that we were kind of going along and then it kind of sort of stopped, but is everything okay? I just want to know. I don't need you to tell me anymore if you're uncomfortable or something else going on, but I just want to address that I noticed we're not having that conversation like we used to have. I just want to make sure I'm not doing something to offend you or that I didn't do something to cut that off. And if it is because I want to correct that, but if there's something else going on and you don't want to share with me, that's okay. But I address it. I don't skip over elephants in the room. I trip on them. So I got to address them. And that's accountability. That's an environment of accountability and an environment of truth. So when I can bring that in that softer way, then that person can tell me, I just don't want to deal with it anymore. And for a lot of survivors, we do get to a point where it was just too much. It's too many forms. It's the last form. It's the last going to court. It's the last thing. I don't want to do it anymore. And that really is my story. I've been too many times dealing with it. I just don't want to anymore. And so, I'm 64. I get to say I don't want to anymore. I don't want to. I'm not gonna. But I just address it. When things like that are obvious, if you ignore them, that's going to be felt as dismissing. So address it. And even if someone says it's none of your business, you won't take it personal, but it'll feel bad if you didn't address it and it could have been something. Make sense? So always err on that side and just don't take it personal because they're in trauma, so they're not going to be in their balanced state anyway. Right? That help?
Yeah.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Most of our staff here speaks with victims and survivors over the phone.
Oh, yay.
How do we allow that space and build that space just within a phone call?
Same thing. Human beings are human beings. You start off with a human being conversation, not about the issue. How are you? You know, how's your family? You know, and I always try to remember something about their family, if it's an A and B especially. You know, so if I know if somebody was pregnant, did they have the baby yet? You know, or your dog was pregnant, or did they have the puppies yet? I try to remember some little small thing as my opener that makes us a human being talking to a human being on the phone, right? Until we get that video chat thing, and then maybe some of us don't want that, but you know, that might happen. But I just start with you human, it's one human being talking to another. And the other thing I always think about is, and maybe because I've had the journey, but you know, how do you want someone to talk to you? How do you want someone to talk to you? This is just really common sense. How do you want someone to talk to you when you got a heavy heart and stuff to deal with? Try that out. It might work for them too. Right? Any other thoughts, questions? You guys got a tough job, I swear, you do. And it is hard when you're talking about folks who don't know what you do. And it's hard when you're talking about folks who are also impacted by trauma, and they bring all their wealth of stories with them that you will never know. So you hold on to the purpose for which you serve. There can be no greater service than our service to our human tribe. The world is made up of the people, and the dreams that we want for our children and the next generation depend on how we are today. If there's nothing else to remember, just two things. You matter, and you are understood. Have a fabulous day. And yours is gone too now, too.
Nope, it is gone. All right, well, thank you so much, everyone. If you would please complete your little evaluation, drop it in
The form.
the back. Yes, please do it. Please complete the form.
Fill out the form.
And thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful